It's Daybreak on Arise News. It's time for the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. We begin with this day. And it leads with Buhari. Osun people have expressed their will through the ballot. It must matter. It must be respected. And that's the president there. Yeah, there will be an unveiling of the NNPC Limited. Let's look forward to that. It's happening on July the 19th at the Presidential Conference Center in Abuja. And all set for Zenith Bank's 7th Annual International Trade Seminar and non-oil export. The Nigeria Labour Congress has vowed to go ahead with nationwide protest over closure of universities.
All right, let's look at Punch, the Punch newspaper. Interesting headline. It says, face off with Arebweshola, cost Oyetola re-election, minister's faction. It has about 3 riders there, where Sasina Komopol Oyetola to talk after consultation is aid. Buhari Atiku Saraki governors Hill Adeleke, government-elect promises to perform. And Osun poll indicates Ige's voice resounds from the grave, says Shoyinka. And on the top mast there, you see Tinubu Shetima APCP best winning combination, says the chairman Adamu Asu. NLC plans national protest, police demand notification.
The Guardian newspaper this morning's leading headline: more worries over rising inflation, headwinds as MPC meets today. The MPC contemplates lesser evil, appraises intervention framework amid turndown. Just below that, you have Adeleke in tears of joy, dedicates victory to suffering Osun masses.
Let's take a look now at the Sun newspaper. Rather, let's take the Tribune instead. Winners, losers as Adeleke's victory returns Osun to PDP. And May Kiao emerges 31st NBA president. ASU strike NLC to embark on nationwide solidarity protest July 26 and 27.
Let's look at the Nation newspaper. It says Adeleke PDP celebrate as Oyetola studies results. I think it has a rider, more than one. Governor calls for calm. Buhari outcome. Osun people's will. Abdul Salami panel decries vote buying. Then at the top mast there, ex-CJN 14 Supreme Court judges, or justices rather, for probe over complicity. Muslim ticket shouldn't be an issue, says Pastor Tunde Bakare. Labour plans protest, we're taking that. Customs confirms plan in auction to auction 7,000 uncleared vehicles.
Some international papers this morning. The Independent. Let's take a look at the headline. Today, McClory loses to Smith in Open drama. Cameron Smith wins the 150th Open Championship at St Andrews yesterday. Just below that, protect UK from extreme heat. That's the ministers call for action to help Britain cope with record temperatures. The country faces temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius for the first time.
The Financial Times says battle looms over plans for city shake-up to prime Big Bang 2.0.
All right, interested in our newspaper. Let's look at what it is saying. Some interesting stories there. Mordaunt and Truss number 10 rivalry ignites. Look at the riders. Rivalry between Penny Mordaunt and Lee Strauss for second place in the leadership race intensifies. Strauss denies being behind attacks on Mordaunt after she suffered a weekend of questions on trans rights. In last night's televised debate, the 5 remaining candidates called for a clean campaign and all ruled out in early general election. All right, you look at the match there. UK breaks for hottest day ever as heat wave hits in that country.
And for the press preview, let's bring in Professor Abiodun Adeni, who joins us from our offsite studio. Professor, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning on Daybreak. Now let's take a look at this day newspaper and really all the dailies, what everyone's talking about Osun State election, which has now been concluded. Senator Ademola Adeleke declared the winner of that election from the People's Democratic Party. Let's take a look at what the President Buhari is saying about it. He says Osun people have expressed their will through ballot. It must matter and be respected. He couldn't have put it any better. This is really a good reaction to that ballot that took place in Osun State. Meanwhile, the governor of the state, who was the candidate of the APC, Oyetola, says he's still consulting with the leaders of the party and he has not conceded.
Very important to say that, the president's comment is quite noble, very much like a welcome development. Coming from the throne, and of course it's in tandem with what the populace saw in terms of how the election went. It was seen as largely free, largely credible, largely transparent, even though there were pockets of complaints around vote buying, around violence. And of course, the outcome too looked like a sweet victory that is well received, across sections of the population. So the president coming to speak in that light is actually in tandem, and it's a welcome development, no doubt. And of course, on the part of the governor, one would have expected that he should have just followed, the mindset, the spirit in which the president spoke by congratulating the winner, showing a great grace, considering what happened 3.5 years ago. We need to get to a stage in this country, where losers will be gallant enough, to congratulate those who are victorious. While we're also asking those who are victorious, to be magnanimous in victory. So what we're expecting out of Osun is not for the system to be stressed again, through the tribunalization of the process, through resort to courts, in a situation where an element of fairness, is in evidence. And of course, we have bigger elections, the general elections coming ahead of us. We need all hands to be on deck. INEC should not necessarily be distracted, and one of the ways in which they wouldn't be distracted is if resort to court is minimized. And that's the much we expect from the throne in Osun, irrespective of the fact that they also have a right, to protest to pursue their causes if they feel that they've been rightly shortchanged. But in this case, from what we are seeing, it's just very obvious that the signs are ominous, and we expect them to smell the coffee and be respectful of the wishes of the people of Osun, so that we can have peace at the end of the day.
Professor, the Punch says face off with Aregbesola cost Oyetola his re-election, and that's according to the minister's faction. Is there veracity in this claim?
Well, I think it's reasonable to make those kind of projections, considering the fact that when there are endless disputes, it might result into sections of interest group, the parties that is, rethinking their membership or working on the ground, working against the interest of their primary constituency. So we may not be able to rule this out in the case of the outcome of the Osun elections. But let's not also forget that there were factions in the PDP as well, but they quickly put their hearts together. The faction in the APC was rather a deep-seated one, involving powerful interest groups, a former governor who has so much influence. And from what we saw during the campaign, he was somewhere else while the campaign was on in Osogbo. And of course, on the election day too, he was out of the country. So the signs were just there that they could not put their hearts together. And do not forget that there are also signals that this election, it's representing for the main presidential election. But overall, these are things that we'll begin to think about, we'll begin to juggle, but it's a lesson somewhat for the politicians to take home, realizing that they always have to mend fences. Reconciliation, rapprochement is always important if they are hoping to be victorious, in contestations.
Even an APC member is blaming the president. The aides to Bajabi Amina also sided with Arebweshala concerning the Osun election, and you're wondering why is party discipline? What happens when people veer out that way while still in the party? Let's look at the nation. Muslim ticket shouldn't be an issue. This is coming from Pastor Tunde Bakare.
Yeah. Coming from a voice like Pastor Tunde Bakare is very instructive, but I think we have to underline the fact that this issue has rather been overflogged, and unfortunately it might remain so. We might continue to belabor it until the general elections, but I don't see APC changing their minds. But what I think Pastor Tunde Bakare is saying is that the party, they've made their choice, and choices are often free, except in a situation of compulsion. Having made their choice, the onus is now on the populace to also go ahead and make their own choice. Do not forget, we have a range of options. We have 18 political parties, 3 of them leading political parties, APC, PDP, and Labour Party. So if APC is not representative enough in the calculation of voters, the PDP is also there, the LP is also there. I imagine that's what Pastor Tunde Bakare is saying, but overall, I think also that Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is slightly a lucky person, lucky in the sense that he's gaining so much attention. All his decisions, good or bad, controversial or otherwise, are being rigorously interrogated, which means that he's somebody that is slightly favored. Otherwise, there's probably no reason why we should continue on this subject matter. We have freedom. It's an election process, where choices are central. And if we don't want to undermine the centrality of choices, there's no reason why we should belabor it. There are options, and we have the freedom, to choose the way we want. I imagine that that's what Pastor Bakare is talking about, but again, everything still lies in the womb of time.
Professor Abiodun, quickly, it's been 5 months since Nigerian university students have been at home following the ASU strike. Now we have the Nigerian Labour Congress saying they're going to go on a solidarity protest with the ASU on July 26th and the 27th. And they say this is to put pressure on the federal government to come to the negotiating table and wrap this up so the students can go back to the classrooms. How far will this go?
Well, I think the intervention of NSC is a welcome development, considering the fact that 5 months, like you said, is too long a time, for this conflict, for this disagreement to be resolved, if all parties are actually serious. We do not have to undermine the importance of education. We understand how critical university education is, and the fact that the young ones have been kept at home, for this long. And of course, this is not just a one-off thing. It's something that has been reoccurring. It's just about time we put this to an end, And of course, public universities really have to be careful, because private universities are actually on the rise. We have nearly 100 of them now, and if government does not step in as quickly as possible, inject the needed resources into the public universities, of course, they might be going extinct, like we have in the case of public secondary schools, public primary schools. But we do not wish this to happen, because the more largely, the merrier. So NSC intervention is welcome, but we do not want a kind of intervention that will compound the problem. We do not want some more protestation, street protestation, and all such things. If their intervention is going to be around the table matter, it's something that will come in and shape some of the items, some of the issues that ASU is talking about, the MOU signed in 1999, whether it's still realistic or not, how well the federal government is ready, to pay the amount they agree to be paying on an annual basis, if not the whole thing, maybe in installments. If the intervention is coming in at that level, I think it's welcome, but it shouldn't compound the problem. It shouldn't be about street protests, because of course we know what street protest is in this country. It can always be hijacked. And of course, if that happens, in the unlikely event that happens, the main issue will be lost on us, That's what I think, really.
Yep. Very interesting, Prof. Very interesting.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, for joining us this morning.